What it do, what it did, what it does. I'm Lolo. I'm back, and I'm here to talk about Ilya's journey through ideas in the book Heated Rivalry. Before we get to Ilya's ideas and the journey that he takes through his ideas, we need to talk about the last conversation we had with Shane and his ideas. And in regards to that last conversation, I feel like I really need to say thank you. Thank you. I posted that video on a whim. I've had this channel for 10 years and never posted anything. I'm pretty popular on TikTok, but I just didn't expect to receive the response that I got. And I really want to thank every single one of you who sat through my rambling and were committed to getting the point. I cannot thank you enough. Also, you may be saying, she's in front of a different set of gray curtains. I'm in front of a different set of gray curtains because I moved all of my recording equipment into my bedroom to do that and then had to move it back to the podcast studio. And so I've just set up a very different looking setting closer to my podcast studio because lifting a roadcaster and a camera and lights, it was just a lot. Speaking of lights, I'm giving forehead again. Give me 1 second. I hope this lighting is a little less forehead and a little bit more friendly. We're all friends here, yeah? Now for the reason you all showed up, my analysis of Ilya's ideas throughout the series, how it moves him through his personal life, how it moves him through his relationship with Shane, and how it impacts the relationship that him and Shane have together. I'm not going to spoil anything past the first book. So if you haven't read the book, you could do so. If you've watched the series, you've got most of it. So on screen this time, you're going to see some excerpts from the book. Somebody told me if I kept posting screenshots of the show, I would get sued. So I'm not going to do that, but we have the context of watching the show. I know less of y'all have read the book, but I hope that you do. And I hope that y'all share your analysis with me. That's what the comments are for, right? So Ilya, my legend, my icon, the sun in my sky. I know the rest of y'all are Shane's girls, and that's fine. That's your business. But if there were a breakup, y'all know where I'm going. Hopefully not to Russia, but y'all know who I'm going with. We have discussed the idea around Shane's ideas as being more than just thoughts, but things that you act on. And it is way easier to find excerpts about Shane's idea within the book because you can search the word idea. Shane is very transparent and I have an idea. He had an idea. Rachel is also very strategic about making sure that we know what Shane is thinking. Ilya is a little different, right? I, interestingly enough, think that Ilya's relationship with ideas is more interesting, way more interesting. While Shane's growth is visible through the ways that his ideas change, Ilya's growth is visible through the things that he does and almost what he refuses to say. Both Shane and Ilya are impacted and transformed by their ideas, not just what the ideas are, but how they choose to act on them. Each character's relationship with their ideas kind of reveals their inner world, what they're thinking and how they want to go about the next steps of their relationship. And through looking at these ideas, we figure out how and why each character struggles, how and why they grow, and also, more importantly, why their relationship develops the way that it does. These leaves are poking me in the back of the fucking head. Give me 1 second. Shit, I'm the leaf. There you go. Am I not wearing green? My theory about Ilya and his ideas is that he is known for loving a bad idea. He's known for loving something dangerous. And while that may have been true for a certain period of his life, it is more so used as a mask to hide how he feels during his relationship with Shane, during the early stages. So who the fuck is Ilya Rozanov, right? Like, who is he? How do we meet him? We meet him through the introduction. Still time for a hat trick, I think, Rozanov mused. His English barely comprehensible between his thick accent and his mouth guard. Should I do it now or wait until last minute? More exciting that way, yes? Our first interaction with him, very cocky, very self-confident. And this is in the prologue. So interestingly enough, while this dialogue happens later in the show, it's because it happens later in their relationship. But this is the scene that Rachel chose to use to introduce us to Ilya. And that is in 2016 in Montreal. And so we get from the gate that Ilya is not a bluffer. He's not half-assed in this thing. If he says that he's going to do it, more than likely, it's getting done. And if someone were to have an idea or a thought that they acted on, thus turning it into an idea, it would be Ilya. And for a series of reasons, we see Ilya's ideas more than we talk about Ilya's ideas. So let's get into this whole Ilya not being a bluffer thing, right? Because in order to bluff, you have to have less thoughts than you have ideas. You have to have more things that you act on than you just think about and never do. So let's take it back to 2008 for a second, where I should have been fucking buying a house instead of cranking that Soulja Boy. Ilya is thinking about Shane, but he hasn't really met him. He would start by leading Russia to a gold medal victory here in Hollander's own country. Then he would lead his team back in Moscow to their championship. And then surely he would be chosen first in the draft. This was the year of Ilya Rozanov. And what do we know? He does beat Shane in that game. He says, you won't be so friendly once we beat you, right? He actually does it. And he has an idea of who Shane is and what he is going to do to or about him before he even meets him. And he acts on all of them, every single one. So we've said that Ilya's ideas don't necessarily come out as words, right? This is the stay low and build king, apparently. And for him, ideas look less like language and more like action, timing, silence, withdrawal. He doesn't narrate his inner world a lot. Rachel does a good job of letting us know what he's thinking, but not necessarily all the time why he's thinking it. And I think that that's part of the performance that is Ilya Rozanov. I don't think that that's a hole in the writing. I think that that's how Ilya would want to be perceived. And how else does Ilya want to be perceived, right? Ilya wants to be perceived as good at what he does, but not necessarily like he's giving the most effort. He wants to be perceived as like the bad boy, like the antithesis of Shane Hollander, technically. He wants to be perceived as someone who will look a bad idea in the face and go for it, right? Like he smokes cigarettes as an athlete. Who else do we know who's doing that? And how do we know that Ilya wants to be perceived as someone who likes trouble? Because he says it. Of all of the things that Ilya could say, this is one of the things that he does say out loud. And not only does he say it, he shows it with his actions. It's explained to us in no uncertain terms that this man loves bad. It's even explained to us in the book eventually that he has slept with his brother's girlfriend, that he's enjoying that he shouldn't be with Shane. But Rachel also does a good job of writing him as though you know something else is there. You know that this is a persona. And it's a persona based off of a real person, right? Like this is a part of Ilya's personality. It's not made up. It's not fake. It's just not all that he is. So we have Ilya's first idea of like, I'm going to go to these games. I'm going to dust Shane. I'm going to then take my team back home. We're going to win a medal in our country. And then I'm going to get drafted first. All of that happens. We then skip forward to 2009 or December 2009, which we know when they go downstairs and they ride the bikes and all of that shit happens. In the book, it says, they were silent a moment, and then Rozanov tapped Shane's ankle with the bottom of his sneakers. Hey, we will see a lot of each other. It took Shane a minute. Oh yeah, Montreal and Boston play against each other a lot. To which he responds, should be interesting. Now, if ever there were a phrase that implied, I have a fucking idea, and if ever there were a mouth for it to come out of, it's Ilya Rozanov's. That should be interesting holds a lot of weight. It holds intention. It holds, what's y'all's favorite word? Yearning. Rozanov looked up at him from the floor. You will be seeing plenty of me. So while his initial idea was just to sort of beat Shane into the dust, right? Like make this his way that he makes his mark in the hockey world to be number one, he has met Shane. And wouldn't you know it, Shane's easy on the eyes. So the ideas change, right? This is where we see a progression in Ilya because we know that he's shifting his plan. His ideas are shifting because his action is shifting, right? If he really wanted to have a decades-long contentious relationship with Shane, he wouldn't have done anything that he did in that locker room. He would have out-treadmilled him, outran him. That sounds like he was running away from him though. But like out-treadmilled him in the book and out-biked him in the show with absolutely no fucking remorse if his only idea was, I'm going to make my mark by beating the shit out of Shane Hollander. But Ilya's got new ideas because Ilya has new information. And what is that new information, you ask? That he has the hots for Shane. And Ilya's thoughts are not just, I have the hots for Shane, but they're more so, what if I would have done this with Shane? They're action-based. So it says in the book, that night in the hotel gym in Los Angeles, 6 months ago now, Ilya had very nearly embarrassed himself. He probably could have covered it up with his usual cocky charm, but he had been damn close to flirting with Hollander, or possibly just pressing him against the wall and taking his mouth. The thing was, he wasn't so sure that Hollander would have hated it. Unless Ilya was very bad at reading people, and he definitely wasn't, Hollander probably would have kissed him right back. And Jesus, that thought had consumed Ilya since draft day. So this is what Ilya has in mind when he, in the show, says, it was my idea. He says that he wanted him and Shane to be in the commercial together, right? I don't know how young players have pull. I don't even know how the fucking commercials work. But in the show, it was Ilya's idea that him and Shane do the commercial together. And in the book, he just has an idea that Shane would kiss him back if he kissed him. And so when he gets to the shower, after the damn commercial filming, we see how he acts on that thought, do we not? And I want to put this here because Ilya has a lot of ideas that he acts on. And I've said more than once, I'm not a YouTube bitch. I don't know what will get me thrown the fuck off this platform. This is my second video, with the exception of my podcast, which we just post and fucking go, right? So all of Ilya's ideas are not going to be in this video, but the ones that move the relationship forward or change or show the change in his progression will be included. Now, you may be saying, that doesn't sound like a facade to me, Lo. It sounds like he wanted to push up on the boy and he pushed up on him in the shower. And then he pushed up on him in his room. That's fair. That's a fair assessment. Except for the fact that, what did Ilya want to do to Shane? Did he just want to fold him like a lawn chair? Or did he want to kiss him, flirt with him? Things that are not inherently, I don't know what I can say. Things that are not inherently physically intimate. Well, they are. Things that aren't sexual, but are almost romantic, right? Like Ilya would like to have this situation perceived as though it was just lust, but he had a crush on Shane. It wasn't just like, oh, I'd like to sleep with him. However, to Shane, his actions he takes based on his thoughts are overtly sexual. They don't have that hint of like, well, actually, I kind of wanted to flirt with and kiss you, but since I don't have that option, I'm gonna go with this. It doesn't look like that for Shane or from Shane's perception. And I think that's a deliberate choice by Ilya. So while he has this purely reckless image, his ideas are softer than his reputation all the fucking time. So we know Ilya's thinking, I'd like to kiss this boy. I've been thinking about him for months. That's not just I want to sleep with someone in a hotel gym. That might be a crush. I might really like this person. We're in the shower now. And there's only so much I can read from the shower, right? There's only so much I can read, period. Rachel, you did your fucking thing, but I'm not getting put off of this. It says in the book, Shane had just gotten his hair wet when Rozanov entered the showers and stood under one almost directly across from him. He could have kissed him then. I don't think he was going for the kissing approach. I don't think that's how he wanted to be perceived, but he had an idea. I need to get close to Shane. How can I do that? And this is the way that he chose, because he also had the idea or the thought that Shane was with it. And lo and behold, was he not? And you have to remember, like, this is a risk on Ilya's part, but not to Ilya. He said, unless I'm bad at reading people, which I'm fucking not, Shane is with this. So in true Ilya fashion, acting on a thought if I've ever seen it, Rozanov stood and crossed the floor until he stood right in front of Shane. You are a bad liar. Shane scowled at him. What's your room number? Rozanov asked. 1410, Shane said far too quickly. And I think at this point, I'm interrupting the reading, but I think at this point, Ilya's like, oh, he going. Oh, he going. You coming with me, baby. Rosanov's mouth twitched up. If I knock on door of room 1410 tonight, maybe around 9, Shane fought to keep his voice even. I might open the door. Rozanov smiled. I might knock. A might here is a formality. The might here is to say, don't put the latch on that motherfucking door. I'm coming up there. I'm coming up there. So we see Ilya's desire and his idea to gain proximity to Shane, to get closer to Shane. The way that he feels, right? His sentiments are a little bit more romantic than what he's acting on. But the idea, the end goal, the thing that he wants to get done is that proximity to Shane. And so how do I get this proximity to Shane? How do I act in a way that will be well received by Shane so that I can also get what I want? Put him through the headboard. So he says, I might knock, and we know he was going to knock since he was in the shower. He would have made this happen in the shower if need be. And the show does a beautiful job at showcasing points where you can see that this is, again, not a facade. It's not completely fake, but that Ilya is also nervous about these things. Like, he's acting on them, but he doesn't know what Shane's response will be. And in the show, we see this in the scene that I'm not going to put here because I don't want HBO to take my home from me. The face he makes when the door shuts of the elevator on Yuna, it's a face of relief. It is not a face of, oh, I'm cool as a cucumber. I'm cool in any circumstance. Even though he has thought to himself, you know, if I had gotten a jam, I could have charmed my way out of it. That's not what that face said to me. However, it's almost written as though you don't know whether or not Ilya really cares if this is a bad idea, up until the point where he gets to Shane's room. He's just acting. He's just putting his ideas into motion. It is not until they have a conversation that Ilya vocalizes, I like bad ideas. I'm aware this is a bad idea. That's why I'm here. So while Shane knows that it's a bad idea that feels right in theory, Ilya believes that it's a bad idea. And he loves that. We also have to remember that these are teenagers. They're not seeing into the long game book that wasn't written yet and figuring that there's a way that they can get out of this, right? He is thinking, how do I act on my thoughts to get some proximity to the thing that I want that, to my knowledge right now, I'll never fully be able to have? And that requires a sort of flippancy about the fact that this is a bad idea. I think that he's rather aware, because he's aware that Shane is a goody two-shoes, essentially, that there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be, this is a bad idea. To which Ilya is already locked, loaded, and prepared to say, I love a bad idea. Let's not stop. And how do we know that he's acting on an idea that he thought was bad from Jump Street and not just, listen to your heart? It's because it says in the book, standing, he looked curiously at Rozanov. So this is Shane. Have you been thinking about this? Rozanov gave a crooked grin and shrugged. I like trouble. Shane laughed. Well, I think we found it. Rozanov looked at him, and Shane knew he was deciding whether or not he could trust him, and then must have realized that it was too late anyways if he didn't. He nodded. In Russia. My coach's son. Shane sputtered. Holy fuck, you do like trouble. He was on the team? This, I think, we see represented in the show when Shane's like, who, another hockey player? Like, do you do this often? Like, do you come here often? Like, what's the tea? Ilya is setting up the self-defense for a later date that, like, oh, it wasn't about you, Hollander. I didn't like you that much. My idea wasn't to, form a romantic connection with you, Hollander. I just have infatuation with trouble. I have an infatuation with bad ideas. And so I want you to believe that if we removed you and put somebody else in the circumstance, that it would be the same outcome. But we know that's not the case. That's what makes this a mask. And what's most interesting about it in the beginning of their story is that Ilya is not aware it's a mask. Ilya genuinely believes that he just likes trouble. And we can go into a couple of reasons about why Ilya believes that Ilya just likes trouble, that his ideas are bad, and that that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. That's the reputation I have, and so I might as well act on the bad ideas. But I think we know, right? We can only imagine the type of dialogue that is happening within Ilya's home, particularly without his mom there. And so he's not thoughtless, right? We've made it clear that Ilya's thinking. He's just not thinking the way that other people are thinking about this approach, about this relationship, about this potential love story. He's selectively expressive. And we see this throughout the books, through both books. People will ask Ilya a direct question and he'll do this. And you're supposed to know what the fuck that means. He likes an air of mystery about him when he doesn't have the perfect answer to a question. And so when you come from a household that doesn't have any emotional dialogue, doesn't have safe means of communication, doesn't have anybody expressing their feelings in a way that you can look at, respect, and model, you kind of decide it's not worth expressing your feelings at all. I almost believe that to Ilya, that young, there is no act that is loving Shane or being sweet to Shane. You know what I mean? Like, the only act that could showcase his attraction to Shane is the reason the show is #1 on HBO Max. I almost think that the feelings part of Ilya, because of his upbringing, doesn't know that there's like a way to express that there's a way to show somebody that you care about them, that you love them, short of what he's doing. It makes me think of like, would you think to hug somebody you love if you never got a hug, right? If you grew up in a household that doesn't do those types of things, that's why there's people in the street, you try to hug them, they flinch because they're not used to that type of interaction. And so to Ilya, at home, completely devoid of emotion. If I were to show emotion, that would have negative consequences for me. However, the way that I act, the only time that I get respect or reverence from anybody is when I literally get onto the ice, make some shit shake, and beat the hell out of other people. There is no action for feeling for Ilya. There's simply thoughts and physical outcomes. That's it for him in his young life. And I say all of this to say that Ilya's danger is not chaotic. His love for bad ideas is not just reckless. It's actually pretty strategic. It's curated almost. So we're in January 2011 and we're in Nashville, if that matters. Isn't that the city of music? Wonderful. I wonder what Ilya listens to. Anyways, it says, Ilya had always been this way. He loved sex and he loved it more when it was dangerous, when it was with someone he knew he shouldn't be with. Whether that was his coach's son or his brother's girlfriend or his teammate's sister, Ilya couldn't resist a bad idea. And Shane Hollander was a bad fucking idea. The worst idea. Wrong in every way imaginable. And we know We know that Ilya is not dumb. We know that he's smart. We know that he makes calculated risks. We know that, if nothing else, hockey is his ticket out of this godforsaken fucking family where I don't have to deal with them or interact with them all the time. And I can go see my thing. So I don't think that Ilya is feeling like, oh, I'm going to risk all of that. That doesn't seem like an Ilya thing to do to me. While he may be perceived as like kind of laid back and nonchalant, he's not a fool. And why is Shane such a bad idea if you've slept with your coach's son? Why is he the worst idea imaginable, right? I see the budding rivalry and all this and all that, but what makes him feel particularly more dangerous than these other people that you've mentioned? Than your brother's girlfriend, your coach's son, your teammate's fucking sister? Could Shane be more detrimental to you than those things? Or do you just think about and care about Shane more than you cared about those other people? And while I can't expound upon this excerpt from the text because I cannot share what else is happening in the text on this platform, it's clear to me that the idea of Ilya liking bad things was once a truth for him. He believed it, as I said. But more recently, it's become a cover-up for how he is truly feeling. Mind you, this is January of 2011. So we met in December of 2008. I told y'all, to me, that's 2009. We're in LA. We're in LA for New Year's 2010. We've now jumped to January of 2011. A bad idea, something that is fleeting, something that you just act on because it's dangerous and because it's fun, is something that you could have gotten out of your system right now. So why are you still thinking about and meeting up with and hooking up with Shane, Ilya? What is the idea behind that? It has to be the continued idea of, I want to maintain a closeness to this person, a proximity to this person, a relationship, albeit entirely sexual at this point, with this person. And it's difficult because Ilya's tendency to let his feelings out through physical action means that a lot of these thoughts that he's having that show that he's caring about Shane more and more romantically are in scenes I can't showcase on this platform once again. But he starts thinking about Shane in different ways. He wants to do different things to Shane. And the thought is not just, I should do this, but more so, would he let me? Would he be comfortable enough with me to do this? Then we get to December 2013, right? And it says, is this your place? Ilya had never been to Hollander's home. It had always been hotel rooms before. The idea excited him. Now, Ilya in the book has been thinking constantly about what Shane's room looks like. He's thinking about the color of his bed sheets. He's thinking about the walls, like not even just in a lustful fashion, but more so just like, I like you, you have a home, I wonder what that home looks like. And so this is another one of those things where we think something into existence. Shane thought about Ilya meeting his parents. And when Ilya met his parents, it went from just a thought to an idea because we've acted on it. Similarly with Ilya in this room that he had thought about for so long. The idea of Shane's room excited him, and not just because of what they were going to do in Shane's room. So when we get to the point where the mere thought of Shane's home excites him and it becomes an idea, I do want to note that this happens earlier in the show. This is kind of the way that we see Ilya's excitement around being in Shane's home as opposed to his investment property. Now, it's important to note that before both of these times, whether it be in the book or on the show, Ilya tells Shane in no uncertain terms, I'm coming to your house. And we know why he's coming to his house, right? Like, are you homeless? What do you mean? He's coming there. Like, he plans to act on this. By the time Shane understands what Ilya's idea is, Ilya's already thought it through and is on the other side of it, which I think is really interesting because Shane basically says, I have an idea, here it is. And that's when Ilya finds out what Shane's idea is in that moment. And Shane often brings up his ideas as he's working through them, which is interesting because that's what's happening in this series. I'm like working through my idea about ideas with you all. We know why Ilya is saying that he's coming to Shane's house, right? But we also know that Ilya just wants to come to Shane's house. He just wants to see it. And so this is where we truly get to visualize Ilya using his lust for bad ideas as a cover-up for having deep feelings for Shane. And as these ideas progress, you can tell they're less about, I got to get near Shane. I'm near Shane. What do I do when I'm near Shane? Okay, me and Shane do the same thing every time we're near each other. I want something deeper. I want something more. And so we see the ideas that he acts on, they change over time. Because the initial idea was, let's play shake weights in the shower right here, right now. That somehow progresses all the way into, I wonder what his house looks like. I bet it's nice. I'd like to be there. So we're in November of 2016. I mean, this is a slow rolling train. If Ilya was just so preoccupied with putting Shane through the headboard of the mattress, this could have been done eons ago. But we see in November of 2016, Rozanov lived in a building that was a short cab ride from the hotel. They had moved their Boston hookups from hotel rooms to Rozanov's penthouse last season. Shane had been against the idea at that time, arguing that he didn't want to risk being spotted entering Rozanov's building. So if it was not Shane's idea to go to Ilya's house, whose idea was it? Ilya's. Ilya is getting tired of being in hotel rooms. He feels more deeply for Shane. And so while he probably proposed it as it was a matter of convenience or whatever, he's like, I want this man to come to my home, come to my house. And from this moment, these ideas just get more and more romantic in nature, right? Like he's thinking about Shane romantically, and thus what we think becomes our ideas, the way that he acts towards Shane is more romantic. Now, before I get to the chicken of the sea, I want to acknowledge something. And that is that Ilya ignored Shane for 6 months, 6 entire fucking months. And you could be asking yourself, how the fuck could somebody do that? If they have all of these ideas about living with this person and spending time with this person and this, that, and the third. Well, I will argue that the moving to Ilya's house was 2016. The Russian Olympics was in 2014. And I think that being confronted with almost like, we don't have to bring Russia to you. You got to come to Russia. And being confronted with the complexity that is Ilya's father becoming more forgetful, but not forgetting to be mean to him. He tells Shane pretty early on, not everything is about you. And that should have been a cue for Shane that, like, I have other shit going on. And I'm not saying it's okay to ghost people for 6 months. But what I'm saying is we have to remember the type of household that Ilya comes from. He comes from a household where your mother can take her own life, and the response to that is shut the fuck up. I wouldn't say that Ilya didn't talk to Shane because he didn't care about Shane. I would say that Ilya stopped talking to Shane because he cared about Shane too much. And I know you're going to say, girl, that's your king. He was dead ass wrong for that. And I'm not saying he wasn't dead ass wrong for that. I'm saying he is dead ass wrong, but let's give the guy a fucking break. So now for the idea that you've all been waiting for, the Tuna Mounts Day. Lily texts Shane, come over. Shane's heart stopped. Come over? Come over? Now? Shane, don't be stupid. Lily, come over. Not for long. An hour? Shane actually let out a surprised laugh like, oh, you're serious. Oh, you're dead serious. Shane, no, come on. We both know that's a bad idea. And I didn't include this in the Shane video because I wanted to really bring it up here, but it was on screen. Lily responds, everything that we do is a bad idea. Come over. Now, if you remember, we found out in 2011 in Nashville that Ilya can't resist a bad idea. So when Ilya says to Shane, everything we do is a bad idea, he's saying, I can't resist you. You're in town. It's a parade inside my city, yeah? You know where I live? Pull up on me. And you may be thinking to yourself, you know, he just wanted to get some, he might have even wanted to fuck with Shane mentally. And this is where I have to sort of go off of book and off of the show and read y'all what Rachel Reed, the author of Heated Rivalry, wrote about the Tuna Mounts Day. She said, I get asked a lot about Ilya's thoughts and feelings during and leading up to the Tuna Mount scene. Here are some answers. Okay, so at this point in our story, Ilya is super in love with Shane, but won't admit it to himself. He's still trying to play it cool, but he has also made this whole plan about getting Shane to spend the night. He knows neither of them have to be up early the next morning. Conditions are perfect. He goes grocery shopping. He imagines what he will say when the time comes. He decides he will turn on a hockey game because that might get Shane to relax. All of this is pre-planned. Ilya has been thinking about it for days. He doesn't invite Shane to stay until after they've had sex. He waits for Shane to be relaxed and happy, and then he asks. He makes sure he sounds perfectly calm when he asks, almost indifferent, but he really wants Shane to stay. And when Shane says yes, Ilya is celebrating inside. The Shane just slips out, and Ilya's mortified. In his mind, he feels he's just admitted to all of his feelings with a single word. When Shane says Ilya back, he's flooded with relief and happiness. It's a mirror of the I love you scene later. When Shane panics and leaves later, Ilya is devastated, but refuses to show it. After Shane leaves, he's miserable and embarrassed. So while it was just a come over to Shane, it was an idea. It was an idea that was thought about for days by Ilya to get closer to Shane. And as I've mentioned, because he was in love with that man and he didn't know what to do about it. And so he just knew, I want to spend more time with you. I want to be around you. And how do I do that? How do I get you to spend the night without saying, it would mean a whole lot if you spent the night with me, right? Because that's an emotional action. I'm going to take the physical route, put it on you. Maybe you won't be able to get up. Maybe you'll be too tired. And heartbreakingly enough, the thing that we see spooks Shane, who believes Ilya is spontaneous, believes Ilya likes a bad idea, and doesn't necessarily believe that this is as big of a deal to Ilya as it is to him. The thing that spooks him is the only thing really that Ilya didn't premeditate. When we see Ilya act first, like it just slips out, Shane is spooked. And unfortunately, that probably for Ilya reinforces the idea that my feelings getting ahead of me only causes me problems. And so we see a retract from Ilya, obviously, like Shane goes off and gets a fucking girlfriend, like everybody's losing their fucking minds. Miles is kissing motherfuckers on the back of the neck. It's going crazy in the club. And in the book, I don't have this screenshot, but Ilya acts impulsively again, right? This is not premeditated. He sees Shane, he loses his fucking mind, he starts kissing a girl on the dance floor, right? We do see in the show that he goes home, party of one. But in the book, it's also kind of embarrassing because the girl's like, oh, my man just like to watch me kiss other people. I'm off this. And so that act of impulse also leads Ilya to a certain degree of embarrassment. And so for the person who is most perceived as reckless, they have sort of been conditioned to not act on an idea unless it's premeditated. Because what comes of that? You let his name slip, he takes off into the night, he gets a girlfriend, you find out on Us Weekly, you impulsively say, I can't take this. I need to go to the club. You go to the club, the man's there. You kiss on a girl on the dance floor. The man sees you, but he don't do nothing about it. And then the girl says, thanks for the ride, bucko. I'm off this. And this is why I say I love Ilya. Like, I just feel like my baby can't catch a break. But then wouldn't you know it, the All-Star game happens. We know what happens at the All-Star game. He thinks, right, because this is not an idea, he thinks Shane is going to approach him and tell him that he's engaged. That's negative self-talk. That's not an idea. That's merely just the thought that's going to drive you crazy in the middle of the fucking night. So when Shane says we're not compatible, he questions his own judgment. Like, I think I know what compatible means, but I can't possibly know what it means because this man would be telling me that he's no longer with the girl that I thought he was going to be engaged with. So Ilya's been through hell and back with the one thing that he couldn't anticipate, which was acting before thinking, right? For someone, as we said, perceived as never doing that, but in fact, always doing that. He has sort of been like kicked and kicked and kicked by Shane unknowingly. The reason that I think that Ilya and Shane have this communication issue that plagues them for years is a couple of different things, right? One, I think that Ilya was not raised to directly express how he's feeling, and that can become a true hindrance for communication. When people don't talk about how they feel, that's a muscle, and you have to use that, or you don't know how to talk about how you feel. I've seen personally in my life men who I could tell through their face they were feeling so much, and oftentimes we're trying to like get it out, and they lose the fucking love of their life because they can't manifest it. And Ilya clearly comes from that type of household. You know, his father doesn't have much to say about losing his mother. As we said, you know, he sleeps with his brother's girlfriend. Clearly that's sort of like unresolved. The brother has a substance abuse issue, not addressed. Just, I need more money to feed this addiction. And on the other end of that, right? On the other end of, matter of fact, let's stay on Ilya for a second. On top of all of that, on top of not knowing how to say what you're feeling, you are in an environment where your native tongue, the language that you think in, is not the language of preference. It's very seldom used. And so Ilya is not only up against the barrier of not being able to make his feelings words, but in fact, not even knowing what that feeling to word translation would be because he hasn't even done it in his own language. And then on the other end, looking at him like, what the hell is going on? Sorry, I darted out of your place and started dating the lady from X-Men. It's Shane Hollander. Shane Hollander, who, God love him, is on the spectrum, according to Rachel Reed. And so that may matter in how he processes uncertainty. The reason that we may hear Shane vocalize his ideas is because saying them out loud helps him organize them. He needs clarity. He needs confirmation. He needs reassurance. So he shares the idea with Ilya while he's having it to see, how do you feel about this idea? For Shane, he is trying to reduce the ambiguity of what the hell is going on. Even when he says that last time we were together, it was nice, Ilya just says it was. He doesn't say, yeah, I planned it. And I'm ranting so fast here. I'm sure there's nothing right here for a good second, because those are little clips that I don't know if I'm going to go back to get. And I don't want to get sued by HBO. So I say that to say, Shane is trying to reduce ambiguity when that is Ilya's comfort zone, right? If I don't say what I want, I can't have it withheld from me. And so while Shane needs clarity, confirmation, reassurance, Ilya lives in the land of implication, action, and control. He'll imply something. He will act on the thing in an effort to be in control, in the driver's seat of where this thing goes next. But we come to a point where he doesn't have any of that. And probably to him, feels like he's used his last good idea. And we run into the concept of negative self-talk again, right? Like, we have this moment with Shane where he has to question his decision-making skills, because the decisions he wants to make and what seems like the right thing to do are vastly different. Ilya, we almost see the inverse. I've internalized that I make bad decisions. Therefore, if I'm making a decision, it must be bad. And furthermore, if I am not being decisive in that moment, I'm somehow punished for it, whether that be like emotionally or whatever. So while Ilya does have this negative self-talk, and I don't want to listen, if you're someone who's read both the books, don't spoil it for these fucking people. Ilya does have negative self-talk. He has doubt. He has fear. Huge issue with avoidance, right? You went missing on your man for 6 months. Unlike Shane, not every thought becomes an idea. And not every fear is acted on. The key distinction here is that his thoughts stay internal. We only see his ideas when he's doing them. We have a scene in the book where Ilya has somehow decided, I got to get out of this. I'm off this. He's thinking about it, I believe, in the book before Shane gets hurt. In the show, I don't know if it's that shown. It really looks like Ilya just gets left. But in the book, it says he'd had every intention of ending things with Shane. He hadn't been able to do that. Not yet. For now, they could text each other and tease each other and pretend they were just friends or whatever. Shane's invitation for Ilya to come to his cottage still existed. Shane wasn't pushing it and Ilya wasn't acknowledging it, but it was still there. If it weren't the worst idea in the world, Ilya would be on his way to wherever the fuck Ontario already. What do we know about Ilya and a bad idea? He's perceived it as a bad idea. He perceives himself as somebody who loves a bad idea. He cannot resist this thing. And we managed, again, with Ilya for the win to go from thinking to doing. What's the famous phrase? I'm coming to the cottage. I'm coming to the cottage. This had happened after, he had watched Shane get hit. He had sort of come back from the distress that is Rose Landry. So I want to speak for a second about the language barrier, because I sort of brushed over it, but I do really want to talk about how that can impact the way that you're thinking. For Ilya to be someone who cannot even process his emotions, to be expected to think certain things and then even translate them, is kind of a heavy thing to ask of him, particularly when he comes from the family he comes from. But this is the importance of their ideas meeting each other where they're at, because at this point, Ilya is sabotaging this whole fucking thing. He has, I think, sustained an emotional injury to a certain degree after the situation with Shane leaving the house that he has yet to shake back from. But thank God for Rachel Reed, and thank God for Shane Hollander, because after Rose, Shane knows what the fuck he wants. He knows exactly what he wants. And we know that Shane, the more he accepts who he is, the better his ideas get. Ilya's going in reverse. And you know what? It's not even fair to say backwards, right? Because Ilya loses his father. And this is where we see it. This is where we see the moment of him, at the very least, being able to say, English is too hard. I don't know. He doesn't even confront the idea that he wishes his father would have accepted him and that his father really knew who he was. He doesn't even really, muddle on that. He doesn't really ponder that for too long. His real issue is like, I'm going through all of this, and the only thing I really want to do is not be concerned with the likes of your ass, Hollander, but you won't let me be, like internally. Because even when Ilya gets the news that his father dies, he does not communicate with Shane. Shane says, fuck it, I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. That's an idea, right? And then Shane has the wonderful idea of, why don't you tell me how you're feeling in Russian? And this is the first time we see Ilya be confronted with, tell me your feelings and I don't want an excuse. Because when he asks Ilya about like Do you want to go back to Russia? That sort of thing. Ilya finds a way to weasel out of that. He doesn't respond well to that type of confrontation, but I think that everything is sort of bearing down on him. And when Shane has this idea, Ilya is able to express himself in a way where he doesn't feel like there's a risk of actually being seen. Ilya doesn't assess that there is any chance that Shane Hollander secretly has Google Translate pulled up and he's going to figure out what Ilya is feeling. So there is no threat to this, I just like a bad idea at this moment. But there is an opportunity to say how he's feeling and get it off of him. And so thank God Shane is stepping up with the ideas at this point while Ilya's stepping back and has an idea that brings them closer together. Okay, so now we're back at I'm coming to the cottage. Great. This is Ilya's idea. I said in my video about Shane that the cottage is Think Central, baby. We're firing on all fucking cylinders at this cottage because Ilya starts revealing his ideas as well. And I'm kind of talking in terms of the show, but I will give you all the difference when I see it. So in the book, this happens in 2017. In the show, it's at the cottage. But regardless, people forget the fact that Ilya wanting to play for a Canadian team was Ilya's idea. It was Ilya's idea. Not being Russian anymore. He says in that monologue, I don't want to come back here. And then he says to Shane in the book, nah, I want to become American or Canadian, but I'm in America. So, and in that moment, Shane wished like hell that Ilya played for a Canadian team. You should, Shane asked. Have you looked into? And it's very clear that of the options between fuck-ass America and Canada, where Shane lives, Ilya wants to be where Shane is. I don't find it reasonable that they wouldn't give the captain of the Boston fucking Bruins or like they can't find a fucking visa for you. That just doesn't, it's a way of him putting out there, I'm interested in coming to Canada without exposing the emotional risk. And he does this in conjunction in both the book and the show with, or I could marry Svetlana. I don't personally, and this is my personal analysis, I don't believe that is what Ilya really wanted to do. Ilya is Mr. Don't Talk About It, Be About It, right? So if he really wanted to marry Svetlana, if he really wanted this visa by now, if he really wanted all of this shit to happen, he would have just made it fucking happen. We see Ilya's ideas when they're fucking happening, when he is doing the thing. I think the idea here is to get Shane to lean in, and he does, heavily. And so the idea of being closer to Shane is the idea that we're looking at here. We're not necessarily looking at like the idea to marry Svetlana. And those ideas are still Ilya leaning in romantically, leaning into the idea of spending more time with Shane, being around Shane. And luckily for us, we're at Idea Central. And the special thing about Idea Central is that we see the two of them exchange idea styles. So with this conversation, obviously, spoiler alert, Shane's dad walks in on him at the cottage. Ilya, I'm coming to the cottage, made it to the cottage. That's no longer a thought, that's an idea. He says, your father, yes? And Shane says, yes, fuck, shit, okay. Shane held his head between both hands. Fuck. And Ilya says, should you? That's a question, but is it really? His idea is, you need to go talk to your father. And Shane says, yeah, okay, you wait here. Shane walked quickly through the house to the front door. He opened it just in time to see his father's car disappear down the winding road. But Ilya's not done with the ideas because Ilya has already told Shane, I think you need to come out to your parents. I think it would be best, even if you don't include me, to come out to your parents. And so when Shane comes back in the house, Shane could have easily been defeated and avoided his parents and said, you know what, we're just going to enjoy the rest of the 2 weeks. That was awkward. We'll figure it out later. But no. And Shane is having these ideas internally. He's not expressing it. We don't know what the fuck he's thinking except for this is my worst nightmare. And Ilya says, do you want me to come with you? And Shane was surprised by this offer. Did he want that? Would he make things even more awkward? He certainly felt like he could use the support. I don't know. Would you really do that? And Ilya took his hand and squeezed, yes, if it helps. The idea that Shane should come out to his parents, tell them the truth, is Ilya's idea. And we only get thumbs up from there. On the other hand, Shane's idea of getting Ilya to meet his parents also comes to fruition here because of Ilya facilitating his own idea. And these ideas cannot be covered up. This is the end of the facade. This is the death of I like bad ideas. Because if he really just liked the bad idea and he brought his ass to the cottage to play hideaway for 2 fucking weeks, he wouldn't encourage Shane to do that, right? So these are ideas that are purely because he loves Shane, purely because he cares about Shane, right? And he's told Shane he loves him, but this is where we see that his ideas sometimes don't even include him. They don't have to include physical intimacy. They don't have to include anything but making things better for Shane and himself as a unit. He encourages him to grab the bull by the horns. You have parents who care about you, who love you. What's the big idea? If this is your nightmare, it's time to wake up. And we get to see all of this because Ilya decides that Shane is what he wants too. He has a pretty good idea of that, or a thought about that, but when he sees Sean and Kip on the ice, it's time to act. It's go time. We need to take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else. Let's get this show on the fucking road. The second Ilya fully accepts Shane as who he wants instead of trying to resist it, his actions become more intentional. He's more protective. He's more romantic of Shane. He only wants the best for Shane. And he's not the most verbal about it, but it's clearer. It's more clear to Shane. Shane can see it as well. And his actions start aligning more with care and not deflection, right? He leans out of that, I can't resist a bad idea, and into, you're a good idea. And perhaps I like good ideas. Perhaps we should just start doing the thing that is of benefit to us when we can, whenever we can. And so while it may seem from the outside like Shane has just become enamored with this bad boy who likes bad ideas, and that bad boy somehow becomes enamored with him back because he thinks it's a bad idea and he's just acting on the bad idea, it's pretty clear that Ilya wanted this just as bad as Shane from the beginning. And had he not gone through the process of trusting himself and his own ideas, none of this would have happened. If Ilya could have seen Shane and acknowledged this is a good idea, he wouldn't have taken the opportunity. It would have just been a thought because Ilya was convinced Shane was a bad idea in the beginning. And because of that, to be quite frank, Ilya did most of the heavy lifting in the establishing of this relationship. If Ilya had not had the idea of Shane Hollander, that ass is mine. Maybe I should have said that differently. I mean, it's true either way. None of this would have happened. Ilya's ideas are the catalyst to the relationship, and Shane's ideas are what see it to the finish line of this book. So while Shane's arc shows us that growing to trust your ideas is how you grow to trust yourself, Ilya's arc shows us trust yourself so you can trust your ideas. And we see through the process of the relationship, it is not until Shane is confident in himself and his own ideas and leans in that Ilya feels comfortable leaning back, right? And not back like, whoa, back up, even though he did some of that, but like, okay, we're both coming to the middle to meet each other here. And so both of these men grow profoundly and deeply through the concept of their ideas, where Shane is learning to act based off self-interest. Ilya's learning that there was already self-interest in his actions this whole time. Not to be corny, but we're back at listen to your heart. And I would argue that in any relationship, feeling secure in the fact that your partner's ideas always include you and your feelings and you've been considered would be the definition of safety to me. The thing that was once dangerous and a bad idea is safe, and the only thing they can't live without. And while those things are experienced differently, they're not felt differently. There is no difference in depth of feeling. Both of these men have a lot of feeling for the other. And how do we know that? Through their ideas. I am truly a rambler, so I appreciate you sitting through this and working through this with me. I am not above reproach. I am not saying this is the law. I am just putting it out there so that y'all can analyze it and see if you see some of the things I see, or if it can change the lens through which you see things. And I love having the lens through which I see things change. So please do interact in the comments with like your thoughts and feelings. I didn't see anybody else talking about the prevalence of the word idea throughout the series, to the point where I did this. I'm sitting in front of the camera and shaning it up, processing through speaking out loud. And I really appreciate y'all sitting through that with me. I can't express it enough. And the response to the first video was amazing. As a reminder, this is not a Heated Rivalry channel. I'll probably just fucking work through things in real time as I feel them. I've been having some feelings about Will Trent. I don't know if I'll discuss that. But I also am talking about Heated Rivalry this week. If it's Friday, then this Wednesday that just passed over on Let Me Stay Focused, we discuss Heated Rivalry, and then next week's episode, we discuss it as well. I'm Lolo Worldwide, wherever you can find me. And Rachel Reed, if I'm wrong, don't hesitate to let me know. Oh, and one last thing. When I wear this sweater on camera, people are always like, what the fuck does that say? And depending on how I'm showing up or the screen that you have, just to read it to assuage, if you were wondering what it says, it wouldn't be wise to bet against the kid. Over and out.